When we think of miracles, we usually picture these huge public displays of power, right? But what if the greatest miracles are, well, unseen? Today, we're going to dive into a story that totally redefines what real strength looks like. It's about a miracle that happens not out in the world, but deep inside a person. So let's just jump right in with a question, and really think about this for a second. What do you do when it feels like everyone around you is just wrong? When you're totally surrounded by injustice, by things that just aren't true, and the principles you believe in are being laughed at? It's a tough place to be for sure, and that is exactly where our story kicks off. All right, so really get what's going on here. You've got to understand the world this was all happening in. We're not just talking about a place with a few issues. No, this was a society that had completely lost its way. It was totally adrift, with no moral compass to speak of. So you've got this society that's just in total chaos. People are worshiping false idols, not truth. And what happens when that's your foundation? Well, you get massive social corruption. Injustice wasn't the exception, it became the norm. And maybe the worst part? Wisdom was just thrown out the window. Anyone trying to talk sense was just ignored. This is let's call it a hostile environment that the Prophet Ilyas found himself in. So right into the middle of this complete mess steps our central figure. Now, his mission wasn't what you might expect. He wasn't there to lead an army or grab political power. Nope. He was meant to be a voice of clarity, a kind of conscience in a world that was just totally confused. His duty was super clear, and it really broke down into three main parts. Okay, so here's the game plan. First off, his job was just to clarify the truth, to basically hold up a light in all that darkness so people could see what was real again. Second, he had to confront the corruption directly, not with swords, but with words, with principles. And finally, his third job was to warn everyone about where this was all headed, the consequences of their actions. It was all about guidance, not forcing anyone to do anything. And right there, we hit our first really powerful lesson. Answering the call to stand for what's right, it's pretty much never the easy road. What this story shows us is that it's a duty, a fundamental duty, and it doesn't matter how hostile things get or if it feels like nobody is listening. So the big question is, how did he do it? How do you even begin to confront an entire society when you're all alone? This is where the story gets really interesting, because he didn't use any of the methods you'd probably expect. Instead, he went with a tool that was way harder to use, but ultimately way more powerful. And you can really see the difference here. The usual response to this stuff, right? It's anger, it's force, it's loud confrontations. But the Elias method, if you want to call it that, was the total opposite. We're talking long, drawn-out patience, quiet persistence, and just sticking to the message over and over, without using force, even when he was being constantly humiliated for it. And this really reveals a powerful truth, doesn't it? That sometimes the strength to just endure, to stay patient when you're being ignored or even mocked, that can be so much more impactful in the long run than any big, loud, angry fight. It's a quiet kind of strength for sure, but man, is it deep and lasting. Okay, so when you hear the word prophet, your mind probably jumps to these giant, epic miracles, right? Parting the sea, healing the sick, that kind of thing. But this story is pointing us toward a totally different kind of power, something that might actually be way more profound. So that's the real question, isn't it? If he wasn't calling down fire from the sky or putting on some huge public show to prove he was right, then what was his great miracle? What was the incredible thing he actually did? And here it is. This is the absolute core of the whole lesson. The true miracle, it was internal. It was his almost superhuman ability to just stand alone, to hold on to his principles, his integrity, when literally his entire society had gone rotten. It was the strength to be the last person standing for what was true. Just stop and think for a second about the kind of inner strength that takes. The idea here is that this kind of moral courage, this internal steadfastness, is actually a bigger deal, a more incredible miracle than any flashy external display of power. It's a power that lives inside a person, not a power that bends the world around them. So you might be wondering, what was the result of all this patience and this inner strength? Well, he didn't suddenly convert everyone overnight. This story doesn't have a neat little happily ever after ending. The impact was something different. And this quote right here, it completely reframes how we think about success. Because what if success isn't about how many people you win over or how quickly things change? What if the real victory is just managing to hold on to the truth, to make your way through a corrupt world without letting it corrupt you? Yeah, he didn't see the big payoff in his own lifetime, that immediate, massive change he was hoping for. It didn't happen. But by staying true, he made sure the message itself survived. He became this living symbol, this proof that the truth could endure. And that echoed down through generations, leaving a legacy that's way more lasting than any short-term win. And that's where the story kind of turns into a mirror, right? It forces us to look at ourselves and what we really believe. In a world that's always pushing us to fit in, the final question is, can you find that inner strength? Can you stay true to your principles, even if it means you're the only one left standing? It's a huge challenge to think about. Thanks for tuning into this explainer.